Okay, yeah, so thank you for inviting us along today. Sarah and I weren't able to join you for the whole thing, unfortunately, because we both had other meetings. I've just actually been at another Teams meeting, which is really exciting because it's our Veteran Service co-production planning meeting for a new service we've got happening in Suffolk for veterans, which is really exciting. So we actually we did this presentation. We put this together for a conference we had with the Carers Trust a few weeks ago. So I'm Kate Hinchliff. I'm the Military Families Project Lead for Suffolk Family Carers, and I joined the organisation 3 years ago, having spent last 20 years working mainly in the charity sector, variety of roles predominantly within voluntary and statutory mental health services. So I come from an armed forces family, with my dad having served in the RAF for 24 years, and my grandma and 2 granddads were in the army during the World War II. So I'm really proud of my military background. I think being an RAF brat, as we are affectionately known, has made me resilient, adaptable to change, and it has really fueled my passion for my role and the valuable work that the project does. So Sarah, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I will do. Thank you. And yeah, thanks very much for inviting us along. Sorry, we've only been able to kind of come in and then got to dash off again. So I'm Sarah Potter. I'm the Mental Health and Wellbeing Service Manager at Suffolk Family Carers. I wouldn't describe myself as coming from a military background, but I do have connections. So my granddad was in the Merchant Navy, my nana was in the Land Army. But really, I guess my interest comes from my uncle who was in the Falklands and various other kind of conflicts as well. And seeing as a young child, actually, the effect that had on the family left behind. And also when he returned, particularly from the Falklands, he wasn't the favourite uncle that went away, that came back. And it's my work that I've done as a support worker, historically, working with some families as well, which kind of fuels my interest and my passion in that area. Kate, do you want to talk a bit about Suffolk for anybody that doesn't know?
Okay, so historically in Suffolk, we have had and we continue to have a large military presence. So we have RAF Hollington, which is situated in the west of the county, and Rock Barracks at Woodbridge is in the east. So just down the road from where Sarah and I are normally based when we're in the office at Claydon, we have Wattisham Flying Station, which is mid-Suffolk. So Wattisham was previously RAF Wattisham. And home to the Phantom Jet, but in more recent years is now home to the Army, and it now hosts the Apache helicopter, which we quite frequently see or hear, to start with, flying around over our offices in Claydon. In Suffolk, we also have American air bases at Mildenhall and Lakenheath. And whilst the Military Family Project does not directly support American personnel and their families due to how we're funded, as an organisation, Suffolk Family Carers does offer support to family carers from these bases. So although we no longer have any naval bases in Suffolk, we do know that over 200 naval families actually reside in the county. So I'm now going to hand you back over to Sarah, who's going to tell you a little bit about how the project started.
Thank you, Kate, and apologies, this is a bit of a whistle-stop tour. We can send the kind of presentation over to you if you're kind of so inclined, but we are aware of time. So where did it start? So as I alluded to earlier, it was around 2006 that I was supporting a family carer of a first Gulf War veteran. She came to us looking for support and desperate for help for her husband, who had significant trauma and, like many, was self-medicating with alcohol. He fell into the trap back then of being told he must stop drinking before he could receive psychological help, and the substance misuse services would not offer a service as he had some psychological support needs. I'm sure many of you will be familiar with this. It was a vicious circle that continued for many years. Through our support discussions, it became apparent that the family carer herself was also displaying signs of trauma, and in latter years she was diagnosed with secondary trauma, having experienced her husband reliving the nightmares night after night. It was really difficult back then to source and access help, and it struck me that there must be many more people out there in similar situations. So we started to monitor our data, and to be honest, the numbers weren't huge, but enough to make us think there must be a bigger picture. As the awareness of PTSD developed and media attention, we expected many more referrals, but the referrals started coming in for parent carers in the forces or concerns around postnatal depression. In 2016, we submitted our first bid for funding. We were really disappointed when the feedback was that there aren't really any family carers in the armed forces, as they are all fit and healthy, or otherwise they'll be medically discharged. This told a story in itself, and we knew we needed to start by raising awareness of carers' needs and who can be a family carer. So we continued to collate our data, and we made some vital connections to endorse our bid, and one was the lovely Jenny Ward. Thank you, Jenny. We were delighted in 2018 when we got our first project funding. So you can see that things have snowballed from there, and the delivery of this project gave us the credibility to apply for further funds. And I'm delighted to say we've just received notification of a further year's funding from the Veterans Foundation. So you can just see there from the original kind of project conception in 2016, we then went on to get some Armed Forces Covenant funding. We had our official project launch. We got some more funding to run some smaller projects. We also had an external review, which was part of the terms and conditions of funding of our original project. And we've been able to secure now 2 rounds of Veterans Foundation funds, which means that we can kind of bring together all of the different projects into what is called the Serving Suffolk Families Past and Present umbrella. So no matter where somebody is in their kind of armed forces journey, if you like, we can offer them a service. Kate, did you want to go on to the next section?
Yeah, we'll do. So challenges for armed forces families, and obviously Ed has just done his presentation, which I only caught the tail end of. But I was really moved by Ed's presentation, so thank you, Ed, and I'm definitely going to have a look and catch up and watch the whole thing. Military families are used to spending time apart as a result of deployments, but these periods don't get any easier, especially if there's a caring role within the family and or a long distance caring role. So frequent moves, sometimes between countries, can cause uncertainty and disruption to education, healthcare and employment for partners. So we've recently, in the last couple of weeks, had a registration inquiry from a mum where her husband and 3 young children have relocated to Suffolk from an RAF station in Hertfordshire. 2 of the children have special education needs, and the process of SEND assessments was started in Hertfordshire. So we'll be working alongside SAFA to ensure that the transition of the SEND assessment is fair, ensuring that the family don't find themselves back at the bottom of a long waiting list. So, and obviously this is something that's set out by the Armed Forces Covenant, so that armed forces families are not discriminated against due to having to move on a regular basis. My colleague Kirsty and I, because there's actually the project initially started, there was just me, but in the last year we've had Kirsty join us on the project, and we actually met with this lady a couple of weeks ago over at Honington, you know, she made it really clear that she struggles as a mum with her caring role, and I think that she felt quite guilty about, you know, admitting that. So I'm just going to shut the door because there's a cat coming or trying to come in. So yeah, and you know, we said to her, you know, you don't have to, please don't feel guilty about, you know, saying that you struggle with your caring role or just being a mum. And I think after that she kind of really opened up a lot more, and my colleague Kirsty will actually be working with her more closely and doing kind of the emotional support, and sometimes maybe just going out and going for a walk, because she's got 2 children at school, 1 at home, so maybe going for a walk locally and also grabbing a cuppa somewhere, and so she can kind of offload, because we find that that's what a lot of our carers just need, really, to offload. But isolation is also a huge challenge for a lot of our families, not just because they are away from family, friends and their usual support networks, but also due to location. So military bases in Suffolk tend to be located out in the sticks, Suffolk is a very rural county, and we really don't have a good bus service. So if you don't have access to a car, or you don't drive, living on base or out in a village can be even more isolating. I also once had a single unaccompanied soldier who lived on base in the accommodation known as the block tell me that he dreaded bank holiday weekends because most of his mates would go home and see family, but as he didn't drive, he was basically stuck on base for a long weekend, which he said he found really difficult, and felt that had impacted on his emotional and mental well-being. So that's just some of the challenges. So who do we support? So we've learned a lot throughout the journey of the project, and a lot of that has been learned from talking to our colleagues that we work with over in welfare at Wattisham and Honington, and also the families. So one of the biggest challenges initially was getting individuals to recognise and identify as a family carer. I think that's quite common for family carers. A big piece of the project's work has been in educating welfare, military personnel and individuals of what the term family carer means and who a family carer may be and what their caring responsibilities may involve. Sometimes the word family can be misleading as people associate the term with meaning of family unit. So we support a variety of carers, including a lot of single unaccompanied soldiers. So typically younger soldiers who live on base with their family living elsewhere in the country. They're often a few hours drive away from home. Sometimes with a long distance caring role, which can bring extra anxiety and pressure. When we first started the project, we overlooked this group of carers as we weren't really aware of them. And it was at our first project steering group meeting that we were first made aware of this group of carers. And it was actually a young female sergeant major who we were working with quite closely at the time. And she kind of realised that she'd been a single unaccompanied soldier. Or she was a single unaccompanied soldier. She was also a family carer for her maternal grandmother because her parents were actually living abroad in Cyprus at the time. So this was a really important valuable revelation for us, and also for the family carer as well. And we now support a number of single unaccompanied family carers with a variety of caring roles. Sarah, was there anything you wanted to add at this point? Are you happy for me to just
happy for you to carry on. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. So how we support individuals and families. So every carer is unique, and we do have a toolkit of support, but all of that involves talking and listening. So listening and hearing what our families and welfare staff need has played a big part in developing the project, and will continue to be as we grow and evolve. The project is for our military carers. It's about them, so it's really important to listen and find out what they feel they need. During lockdown, and then later, and to adhere with social distancing restrictions, we had to change the way we'd previously worked, as did everybody. And other projects within Suffolk Family Carers started using walk and talk as a safe way of meeting to face-to-face and also offering support. We use this as a way of continuing to support and engage with our family carers whilst keeping them and ourselves safe. So Needham Lake is very close by to us at Claydon and also to Wattisham Flying Station. So it was an ideal place to meet family carers from Wattisham. So we'd grab a cuppa from the on-site cafe, a couple of bags of duck food, and off we'd go. Fresh air and exercise was an added bonus to all involved, especially after being at home during lockdown, and also working from home during the pandemic as well. This is something that we still offer as we recognise the benefits in regard to both physical and mental well-being, and sometimes the change of the same four walls and listening ear can make the world of difference to a family carer. And we also find that family carers tend to open up a lot more if they're away from the family home as well. So worry workshops, and you can see our worry monsters in the slide there, were developed by our Suffolk Family Carers Young Carers team during lockdown, and the workshops are aimed at parents and children aged 5 to 11 years as a way of talking about and addressing their worries, something that was of particular relevance during lockdown as we continue to find our way through the pandemic. So we've used those and they've been really popular. The project has 2 resident worry monsters, and the other week Kirsty and myself eventually came up with the names Poppy, obviously the symbol of resemblance. So Poppy is the one with the slightly wonky teeth. Poppy's actually belongs to me, so the orange and blue worry monster. And the other name was Dandelion, and we chose Dandelion because it's the official flower of Armed Forces children worldwide. So that's why we chose Poppy and Dandelion. And Poppy and Dandelion actually had their first outing to one of my old primary schools, Rinkshaw Primary School, last week, and we did 3 afternoon assemblies to the children there and the staff there. So we've also offered youth and adult mental health first aid training as part of the project, and this training has been well attended and received, and it's something that we will continue to offer as well. And again, our training, we kind of listen to what our families want and what they think would be helpful to them. We did actually make a film, which was the main kind of element of our presentation, but I think it's probably going to be too long to show that as well, isn't it, Sarah? Because it's about 14 minutes long. So what we can do is we can actually send you the attachment for that, so you can watch that in your own time. But it's really interesting. We actually made it with Captain Louise Davis from 4 Army Air Corps at Wattisham, and Louise is great. She's recently taken up a role in welfare, and she's brilliant to work with. She's really passionate about getting her people the support they need, and she's got a real interest and a real passion for mental health as well. So it's been great to work with Louise. But we can actually send you that film as a separate link. So moving on from serving personnel, as Sarah mentioned, we support serving Suffolk families past and present, and the funding that we received from the Veterans Foundation has enabled us to do that, and will also enable us to continue to do that. So we're really pleased and excited that we've been able to do that. So I've recently started working with a lady who's caring for her dad who has vascular dementia. So our carer lives with her elderly parents, and she's currently working full time, but she's working from home due to COVID. She has her own physical health conditions that she's trying to manage, and her caring role is also impacting on her long-term mental health. Her father is an RAF veteran and has recently been diagnosed with vascular dementia. Mum's health and memory has also declined over the last few months, and a recent memory clinic appointment indicates that Mum could also have a form of dementia. So essentially we have a carer who's living with and supporting both parents with dementia. So our support up to date has included emotional support via regular phone calls and text messages, and sometimes those phone calls, those conversations can be out of hours to fit in with her work-life balance as well. I tend to go with what suits her best. So sometimes we might do it at lunchtime, or we might do it after 5:30 of an evening. So we've also done a lot of signposting and supporting with the often complex navigation of local social care services and dementia care. Advice and guidance also in asking her employer for a reduction in work hours to better support her parents and to manage her own health. So more recently, after that initial reduction of hours, we also supported her in negotiating a Wednesday off, giving her a day to make phone calls, take her parents to medical appointments, but also to hopefully allow her the occasional Wednesday afternoon to herself. I did speak to her last week, actually, end of last week, and she said that the Wednesdays, although she doesn't always get much time to herself, have helped in the fact that they take the pressure off her during the rest of the week, because she said quite often she can be dealing with something at work and in the back of her head she's thinking, oh, I've got to make that phone call or whatever. So she said that has really helped. So more recently, at her request, we started face-to-face appointments away from the family home. So I started working with this family carer just as we started to come out of lockdown, so kind of summer this year. So we'd go and sit out in the back garden, but we now just go somewhere where we can grab a cup of tea, and the carer can have the opportunity to talk openly and offload without feeling judged. So she said to me, it's been really helpful talking things through. It just feels so much better. And after a check-in phone call, she just said, oh, thank you, Kate, there's now a light at the end of the tunnel today. And I think that often we do underestimate how helpful and powerful sometimes just sitting on the end of the phone and having a conversation and listening to somebody can be, and the difference it can make to them. She also has expressed that sometimes she feels guilty, that she has resentment towards her parents because of her caring role. And again, I've said to her that that is a completely normal reaction for family carers to, to feel guilty. And sometimes people feel guilty about saying that as well. Okay, I'm hoping my voice is going to hold out. You'll have to bear with me. Within the armed forces community, there's still a real stigma when reaching out and asking for help. And this can be both current serving and ex-serving and veterans. Seeking help can be seen as a weakness, and serving personnel and their families are often concerned how this may affect a military career and or a lifestyle. Sometimes it's been difficult to engage family carers, but the key is to not give up and to keep trying. Resistance to engage can be because people are unsure, and often telling them that myself and Kirsty, who works alongside me on the project, have military connections can be a game changer in getting staff and families on board. Obviously, not everybody who works with military families is going to be able to kind of share that information, but we found that it definitely, some people certainly have a change in attitude once they know that, you've got a military connection, so you kind of maybe understand a little bit of what they're having to cope with on top of being a carer. So some feedback from current serving. So after a first face-to-face meeting with the carer and cared for, now initially this couple weren't actually going to come along to the meeting, but they said, we were both really nervous about the meeting, but as soon as you and Kirsty walked into the room and said hello, we knew it would be okay. We walked away from the meeting feel like a bit of a weight had been lifted and we weren't so alone in all of this. And I think sometimes that just being ourselves with people and being welcoming and being friendly, can make the difference and put people at ease. Recently, we put on a carers coffee morning for veteran carers and carers of veterans. Initially, at the first meeting, we had 4 who had expressed an interest in attending, but due to their caring commitments, we had 2 attend on the day. And that's another thing I think we've come to realise, that actually, carers sometimes can't keep to appointments because something may have happened at home, and those things have to take priority. Having said that, it made a difference to those 2 individuals, an opportunity to have a break from their caring role and to meet others in a similar situation. So we had our second coffee morning the other Saturday, just after we'd done this initial presentation, and we actually had 4 family carers turn up. And despite the fact they were sharing, and talking about their caring role, it was a really lovely morning because there was a lot of laughter shared as well. And for our next coffee morning, rather than having it at Claydon at our HQ, we're actually going to go to Stonham Barnes, which is quite local, and we're going to book a table at the cafe there, and then have a look around. So it's going to be kind of a change of scenery, and we're hoping going forward that we might be able to, there might be some different places we can go and have our Saturday morning coffee morning. So we've got Thornham Walks, which is nearby, which is really, really beautiful, really accessible to people as well, even those with disabilities. And we've also got Needham Lake and different places. And the hope is eventually that the actual coffee mornings will become peer-led. So Kirsty and I will step back and they will become actually led by family carers. So before I hand back to Sarah, I just want to say that we've worked hard to build good working relationships with staff at Wattisham, RAF Honington and Rock Barracks and the other agency involved, and we really value these relationships and just want to thank them really for their continued support of the project. So I'm going to hand you over to Sarah.
Thank you, and I'm aware that we are just over time, so this is the last slide, and I'm also aware that I'm kind of preaching to the converted here, because you probably all know far more about this than us, but just because we've done it on our last presentation, just kind of a word to the Armed Forces Covenant and the guiding principles, but also just thinking about how that actually helps us support the families. So having knowledge can help ensure that families can access their rights and entitlements. And as Kate mentioned earlier, it's not about the preferential treatment. We have had some people think that it's about that, but it's about being treated fairly and not being placed at disadvantage because of their service. And as an organisation, if you haven't already, you can sign up to support the Covenant, which is one of the first steps to showing your commitment, which is what we done at our launch in Wattisham. And also one of the questions that we have been asked before is kind of how you find out what family carers do come from the armed forces community. And a very helpful lady suggested that we ask it this way. So have you or the person you care for ever served in Her Majesty's Armed Forces? And we then break this down as an organisation into service areas of veterans, reservists, and then we prompt people around the national service kind of age as well. And because this ended in 1960, a lot of people weren't telling us that they had kind of done it because they didn't see themselves as a veteran, but actually they would kind of count as that. But like I say, well aware that you probably all know far more about it than we do, but just felt it was important to mention. So I think that kind of concludes our very whistle-stop tour. We will send the PowerPoint across, we will send the YouTube link across. Thanks so much for asking us to come along.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really exciting time for the project as it continues to evolve, and you know, it's really nice to have the opportunity to share our journey with you today. And can I just say a big thank you to Jenny Ward, because this wouldn't have happened without Jenny, would it, Sarah?
No, that was like a very helpful lady, a very kind lady. Yeah, no, absolutely. A chance meeting with Jenny at an event kind of made it all happen. Yeah, so thank you very much, Jenny.
Oh, I'm absolutely delighted that it's going so well. We knew there was a need for it. I think that was it, isn't it? That's the key. Is and you're just helping to give that evidence to, you know, to say let's see this replicated around the country.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.